Thank you, Cinderella, for the wonderful intro music. How you doing? Happy Friday. Great to be with you back from vacation. I am your host of the Facts Over Fandom show, Brandon Podgorski. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can check us out on YouTube and Rumble. Just type in Facts Over Fandom. We should pop right up. I don't look like I've gotten any more tan. Certainly haven't gotten any more attractive. So sorry for those of you who are watching online. But it's been 2 weeks since I've done the show. Happy to be back doing this show. Is one of the things I love. I've talked about it. Some people for hobbies, they like to quilt, they like to hunt, they like to fish, run, whatever. I like to run. But for me, I like to podcast and I like to talk about sport. And specifically, I like to talk about sports and business and culture. We're definitely going to get into all that stuff today. So it's good to be back in the captain's chair here in the home office of the Facts Over Fandom show. So today we're going to talk about building a fan base and specifically why moms play a big part in building a fan base. And we're going to go off my experience from this past week. I told you I was on vacation, and my family and I, actually all extended family, had my parents and my brother and his family and some cousins. We were down in Anna Maria Island in Florida, which, if you're not familiar, it's kind of an island about southwest of Tampa. So while we were there, we had a chance to go and watch a Tampa Bay Rays game. If you haven't been to a Tampa Bay Rays game, highly suggest you go and watch. I'm a big watching baseball indoors is just weird. I'm sorry, it's just weird. Baseball indoors, I didn't necessarily like it, I guess, being a purist. But I'm going to tell you something. We had a fantastic time at the Rays game. So me being a guy who would pay money to go watch baseball indoors, that almost would never happen. I am so glad I did. And we're going to talk about that today. But before we get into that, I want to hear from you. If you're listening to this show, please follow us on social media. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram at FOF_show, both Instagram and Twitter, same handle at FOF_show. Again, like I said, you can watch this show every week. It drops on Friday at 6 a.m. on Fridays. We're on YouTube. We're on Rumble. Again, just type in Facts Over Fandom and it should come right up. Just look for the Facts Over Fandom in white lettering, and there's a red bar with a black background with a baseball and a graduation cap. If you see that, you know it's us. Finally, if you're not an audio person, and believe me, looking at me, I get it. And this is just a low budget show. I don't have multiple cameras and cutaways and overlays and things like that. I run this through basically just a Zoom meeting, and I can share my screen from time to time on stuff. If you like listening to the audio, please listen to us on Spotify. That's kind of our preferred audio platform. Now, we're also on Apple. Love Apple podcasts. That's where I listen to a lot of my podcasts. For this show, though, I listen on Spotify because that helps us down the line, hopefully with maybe monetizing this. So listen to Spotify, but we're on Apple, we're on Google, we're on Amazon. Check us out there. All the listens help. Subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating, like us on YouTube. All of that helps. So let's talk about building a fan base with moms. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit about our experience at the Tampa Bay Rays game last Wednesday. But I want to give you, again, this is Facts Over Fandom, and I want to give you facts. In the second part of the show is where I get to give my opinion on something. But I really want to kind of stick with some facts at the intersection of sport, culture, and business. So let's talk about the importance of women as sports fans, because I think when you think of a sports fan, you might think just automatically of a man, and maybe an older man or a middle-aged man. You know, that's kind of who the stereotypical sport fan is. And by and large, it's not untrue. However, women drive so much of the purchasing decisions, so many of the purchasing decisions in the home, that if you're a team, you absolutely cannot neglect marketing to moms. So as we think about women as sports consumers, decisions made by women for sport clothing purchases in the home, 86% of sport clothing purchases are made by women in the home. So I'm married. I've got a 4-year-old son. He's starting to play sports. He just had his first season of T-ball, which was a blast. And if you think about if you're older and growing up in the home, or a lot of this happens in my home, I have probably bought 2, maybe 3 shirts in his lifetime in the 4 years that he's been alive. You know, that 90, probably well over 90% of the clothing that's been bought for him that hasn't been a gift has been bought by mom. Moms take care, by and large, 86%. Moms take care of all those purchases. And if you want to grow a fan base, you know, growing it at the grassroots level with kids is so vitally important. And moms are the ones who take care of most of those decisions. So, you know, you're thinking, if you're Nike, if you're Adidas, if you're Under Armour, and you're going after, you know, youth sports is about a $5 billion business, and you want a chunk of that business. I mean, you just go to any big sports complex on the weekend, and you're going to have teams from all over coming to play. So I live here in Northeast Indiana, here in Fort Wayne, and we've got a number of places, whether it be soccer or baseball or volleyball. In fact, there's a volleyball facility literally, I don't know, maybe it's about a par 5 away from me. For me, it's probably more about a par 10 because I suck at golf. But it's about a par 5 away from me. And this volleyball facility, like every weekend, that parking lot and like the surrounding streets are just full of cars, of kids coming to play in these tournaments. And when they're coming to play these tournaments, they need shoes, they need knee pads, they need uniforms, they need tights, they need, you know, for the girl, they need sports bras, right? Compression short, all these things that you need just to play that one sport, not to mention the actual equipment. You know, these retailers, these manufacturers want a piece of that market, and moms are the ones who are driving these purchasing decisions. So there was a commercial, I think, from Dick's Sporting Goods. I should have brought this up. In fact, I tell you what, I'm going to pause the podcast here real quick. I'm going to find this commercial, and then we're going to come right back. Okay, I found the commercial, and I want to bring this up because I think this really encapsulates what I was trying to get at. And I'm going to bring this up. I want to make sure that I can share the sound here for you to listen to. Like I said, this is kind of a low budget share or low budget show. There we go. So I don't have a producer doing this. I'm doing this kind of on the fly. But I talked about, you know, moms driving purchasing decisions. And this is a commercial from Mother's Day in 2022. So I guess this was last year, from Dick's Sporting Goods. And it's about a minute long, and it's going to make a little bit more sense if you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble. But I just want to play this video here, and it shows some of the moms in the executive positions there at Dick's Sporting Goods talking to their young kids as they get ready to play a sport.
Hey, bud. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah? What's up?
I'm kind of scared
Yeah. How come you're scared?
because I never tried before.
Yeah. What do you think's gonna happen?
I don't know.
Do those other kids look like they're playing really well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but do you think you could play pretty well too?
Yeah.
I think so.
You doing okay? It's gonna be fine.
Mommy gets scared too, buddy. But I gotta also be brave, because if you're brave, you also might try something new. And maybe if you try it, I think it could be a lot of fun, huh?
Maybe if I scored a goal.
You think you could score a goal? Yeah? I promise you, you keep trying, you'll do a good job, and it'll be fun. I'm so proud of you, buddy. I love you.
So there you go. You kind of get an idea there of just, you know, through the commercial, moms are coaching their kids, or before they're going out to practice the recital for the ballet, the game, they're reassuring them. You had the mom in the pool, helping their kid learn how to swim, get acclimated to the pool. You had the mom driving their kid to practice or game or whatever. And so, I mean, it's a little bit anecdotal to a certain point, but I don't think it's too far out of the realm of being factual to say, you know, moms drive a lot of what happens domestically in the house. And, you know, I'm not using a play on words there, but whether it be driving their kids to their sporting events, being there to support them, and certainly purchasing the goods that they need, moms play a big role in that. So that's going to play a big part in what we're talking about on how to build a fan base. So if you're a equipment manufacturer, if you're a team, you cannot neglect moms, even though, again, stereotypically, when we think sports fans, we think of men. 63%, and this was kind of interesting, 63% of men's sport clothing bought by women. So again, not only are women buying 86% of all sport clothing purchases, and that also includes 91% of children's sports clothes, right, bought by women, but 63%, over half, in fact, you know, well over half of men's sporting clothing have been bought by women. And again, I don't know, you know, 63% is kind of a high number, but it's also 37% that men would buy more than women. And I know that would probably be true. In my case, I buy a lot more sporting or equipment, clothes, things like that for myself than my wife does. But that's just because, you know, I kind of participate in specific sports, whether, you know, certainly as a triathlete, there are certain things and needs I have as a triathlete that are highly, highly specialized that my wife just wouldn't be able to buy. She just wouldn't understand, right? And that's not her fault. That's just my unique needs as a triathlete. But I think for a lot of places, you know, I think about my own parents. My mom buys the majority of my dad's clothes, right? Got to make sure dad looks good when he goes out. And a lot of that, where there would be like his golf shirts or, you know, other things that go along with that. You know, 63% of men's sports clothing were bought by women. And, you know, we got to be a little bit careful with some of these statistics. These here, they're coming from digital TV research. And they were looking specifically at fans and what fans or how many fans would be willing to purchase over the top. And when we talk about over the top access, we're talking about streaming. How many would pay more for streaming? But so their numbers are going to be, I don't want to say fudge, but they certainly are probably going to be a little bit biased, a little bit. However, in their research, they found that 80% of women consider themselves to be sports fans. And 50% of those would be willing to pay more to stream their favorite team. Interesting. Now, I want to stick with that, with 80% of 80% of women consider themselves to be sports fans. So 8 out of 10 women. Now, we don't know what level of sport fan they are. Like my wife, I think she would be considered a sports fan. I've certainly kind of recruited her to the cult of Cub, being a Cub fan, but she doesn't live and die with them the way that I do. But she would, if you would ask my wife, hey, do you like sports? She'd say yes. She likes to sit down and watch the NFL on Sunday. And again, we don't even have a favorite team. I guess you could say that we're Colts fans. We grew up, or I grew up in Indianapolis, and she spent, you know, I think her maybe middle school and high school years in Indianapolis. So we both from Indy, and we both like the Colts. You know, again, I only have one room for one team in my life to live and die with, and that's the Cubs. But so she doesn't even have like this strong affinity to an NFL team, but she will sit down and watch NFL football, you know, from kickoff at 1 o'clock through the Sunday night game on up through 11 o'clock to midnight. So yeah, she would consider herself to be a sport fan. So I want to think about that. 80% of women consider themselves to be sport fans. So this is going to go into a little bit, maybe a little bit wonkier territory, but a larger discussion on building that fan base. And I always thought about this with the Super Bowl halftime show. If you look at the average American football fan, okay, it's almost about 60% male, 40% female. So that's a really high number for females. 4 in 10 are football fans, right? We're 6 in 10 are football fans for males. So that's a huge market that the NFL can tap into. If the only thing that you're going to do is just market to guys like me who are sports fans in their mid 40s, you know, you're only going to get so much revenue, right? Only so much is going to come back to you. If you market a little bit more broadly, and we know that women make the majority of household purchasing decisions, what can we do to bring in those women's fans, those female fans? And what brands can we partner with to sell advertising who are going to get that return on their investment because they know moms are going to buy those goods, and now they're going to continue to advertise on NFL games. So you see how this all works together. So if you're a league, if you're a team, you absolutely, positively cannot alienate your female fans. You have got to bring them in, right? So the average American football fan, about 60% male, 40% female. Those aged between 18 to 49, kind of that key demographic is 70%. However, more than half, about 55% of NFL fans are over the age of 35. So the NFL skews a little bit heavily male and a little bit more kind of middle age. 68% are college educated, and that would correlate with the fact that household incomes are over $75,000. So about half of American football fans, 54%, their household incomes are over $75,000. And political affiliation, just under 50%, tend to be Republican, conservative, however you want to categorize that. So men, middle age, college educated, middle class, we'll say, and I don't know if the political persuasion really matters too much, but they tend to be more Republican in the NFL. So that is your target demographic. But like we talked about, women are going to control a lot of the household purchasing decisions. So with that in mind, if we're looking at 40% of our fans are female, what can we do to make sure that we are being attractive to our female fans? And that's what's going to kind of go down a different route here as I was thinking about Super Bowl halftime performers. And the NFL knows I am their model fan. So everything we just talked about, those demographics, boom, they hit them. I check off every single one of those boxes, right? They know they have my eyeballs. Every Sunday, they've got my eyeballs. Even though I don't even necessarily have like this strong affinity towards one team, they know they got me. College football, it's got me as well. Football's just a great game to watch. I love it. I can't wait till my son starts playing it. But with that in mind, what can we do for the NFL to make sure that we get women in, especially for something like the Super Bowl, where commercials almost went for $7 million for a 30-second spot this year? Well, something we can do is put in entertainment with the game. What can we do to bring in some stars to get female viewers to watch? And so one of the things when I'm teaching, when I talk about sports marketing and specifically sports broadcasting, I show the difference of the Monday Night Football intro from the 70s, where you got Howard Cosell, to today, where you have like, you know, the Hank Williams Jr. song, but you also got Florida Georgia Line and Jason Derulo and guys like that who, frankly, I don't listen to. Hank Williams Jr.'s, I'm cool with. Hank Williams Sr., cool with. I'll listen, right? Florida Georgia Line, right? Jason Derulo, I don't know if I'm even pronouncing the name correctly. I haven't listened to one of the songs. I don't know. But they're not marketing to me. They know they already got my eyeballs, right? What can we do to bring in other fans? So let's go down the list of halftime performers. Let's just go to, I got the entire list here. I don't know if I want to go exhaustive, but let's just go down through the last 10 years. Let's go from 2023 to 2013. Rihanna. All right. So I am your typical NFL fan. Okay? Male, college educated, middle age, middle class, lean right. Am I listening to Rihanna? Nope, not one bit. Am I watching the Super Bowl anyway? Oh, yeah. Who would Rihanna's fans be? Well, we've got a female rapper or female R&B singer, hip hop, however you want to categorize her. It's probably going to bring in more female fans to watch the halftime show. Boom, got it. 2022. Now, this one's kind of a mixed bag. I think this one, the NFL did a really nice job of kind of reaching out to a lot of people in my generation with Eminem, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick Lamar, and Mary J. Blige. I think that one kind of cut across a lot of different generations there. 2021, the weekend without an E, because we're saving money on the vowels, apparently. Weekend. Again, haven't listened to his music. I know he's a little bit more poppy. So we're going to be bringing in a little bit younger audience, and I'm going to assume probably skews a little bit more female. Shakira, Jennifer Lopez, Bad Bunny, J Balvin, Emmy Muniz. Okay, I've heard of Shakira. Obviously, I've heard of Jennifer Lopez. Don't listen to their music. Don't know who Bad Bunny is. Don't know who J Balvin is. Don't know who Emmy Muniz is. So again, NFL knows that I'm watching the game with, we'll say Bad Bunny, J Balvin. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that, but I don't care. And Emmy Muniz, they're bringing in different viewers, right? Because the more viewers we can bring in, the more we can sell these ads for, and the better that our ads do, the more we can sell them for next year. 2019, Maroon 5, Travis Scott, Big Boy, from Outkast. Outkast I like. Travis Scott, don't know much about him or who he is. Maroon 5, I know who they are. I've heard their songs. Not really interested. Again, I think that probably skews a little bit more female. 2018, Justin Timberlake, certainly one of the NSYNC, right? NSYNC. I wish my wife was here. She could fact check me on that. I think he was in NSYNC. It was either NSYNC or Backstreet Boys. If I had to put money on it, he was in NSYNC. Justin Timberlake. Again, I did not listen to that, but that wasn't for me. And the Tennessee Kids, have no idea who they are. 2017, Lady Gaga. Certainly your typical NFL fan is not listening to Lady Gaga. It's going to skew highly female. Probably brought in a lot of female eyes to watch that. 2016, Coldplay. Coldplay's all right. Beyonce and Bruno Mars, again, going to skew a little bit more female. 2015, Katy Perry, Lenny Kravitz, and Missy Elliott. Katy Perry certainly is got a lot of name recognition. Again, I think she's probably going to skew a little bit younger and probably a little bit more female. Lenny Kravitz, I would have been just fine with Lenny Kravitz if that was the only guy there. But again, I'm not the one that they're trying to market to necessarily for the halftime show. And then Missy Elliott, I think she kind of cuts across both men and women, at least in my age demographic. 2014, Bruno Mars, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Red Hot Chili Peppers, that's going to bring me in. Bruno Mars, probably bring in more of the ladies. And then 2013, Beyonce certainly is going to bring in more women. So, as kind of your typical NFL middle-aged fan, and I don't know if they've got a 2024 performer. They usually don't announce that till a little bit closer, maybe just 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out from the Super Bowl. I don't know who they're going to have, but when I heard Rihanna this past year, I'm like, right? But I don't really care about the halftime show. I care about the game. Right? And so all this goes to my experience this past week, last Wednesday at the Rays game. So tickets to go to a Rays game, very, very reasonable. I don't know if it was this particular time of this game. This game, I think it was a 12:30 first pitch. So it was an afternoon game. Now, they were playing the Orioles, and at the time, you had the two best records in baseball playing each other. So it was a pretty big game, especially in the American League East. But they had $10 tickets you could have bought for that game. Now, we paid just a little bit more, but for three of us to get in the game, it costs $100, like on the dot, $100. And we had seats. You have to be a little bit careful with my, because he's only 4 years old, so he's going to lose interest quick. So we made sure to get tickets in the outfield. Now, we were only just a couple rows from the fence, and my hope was like, nobody would be in front of us. We could wave to the right fielder and maybe he would toss us a ball. But I wanted to make sure we got the seats in a section where there weren't going to be a lot of people. He can run around, and if he had something in his hand, if there was a giveaway or something, and he was swinging around, he wasn't going to hit somebody. So we got to be a little bit strategic on that. But for 3 people to get in the game, it was only $100, and $100 is a lot of money. I'm not poo-pooing that at all. It's a lot of money for many people. But that's, one of the things we save up for on vacation. And I love going to ballparks. If you can see behind me right here, I've got my map, and I put this up on Instagram and Twitter this past week at FOF_show. But I got my map of ballparks. I'd never been to the Trop there in St. Pete. So that was kind of cool to get to do that. And that was another thing we could check off the list. And that's what I like to do on vacation. I like to go to ball games. Anyways, I digress. So we got in for pretty cheap, and you could go on to the Rays website. You can pick your own seat. So that was pretty cool. So we get there. I did Park Whiz, and I do Park Whiz just about to any game I go to. Sometimes you can save you a little bit of money. Sometimes it's kind of negligible, and if it's more expensive or not. But I like to have a parking spot all ready to go before I get there. That way I don't have to fight. Now, the one thing that was a little bit weird is I tried to buy parking tickets on the Rays website, and their parking rates are extraordinarily reasonable. The cost to actually get in and go to a game there is very cheap compared to many other MLB teams. But for whatever reason, their website wasn't letting me buy parking there kind of right next to the stadium. So I parked Whiz. We maybe parked 2-3 blocks away at most. And so that was no big deal. So we get in there, we find our seats. In the second that we sat down, again, remember the Rays, and we look at baseball, and you know what, let me go ahead and bring up the demographics for baseball, right? 57% male, 43% female, even a little bit higher than football. Age 18 to 49 years old, 66%. It does skew older, so you do have a pretty big fan base, age 50 and above. 67% college educated, very similar to football. Household income over $75,000 a year, 47%. And so, with that, with 43% of their fan base being women, you got to make sure that when a guy like me comes to the game, and again, I'm checking off a lot of those boxes there, male, middle-aged, college educated, household income over $75,000 a year, right? I'm checking off those boxes there. You already got me. So if you want to make sure, in knowing that women make the majority of purchasing decisions in the house, if you want to make sure we come back, you better make sure mom has a great time. And by proxy, if the kid has a great time, it's going to be easier for mom to come back. So we're in there. My son has on a Chicago Cubs shirt, and I've got on a Cubs shirt as well. And the second we sat down, the usher comes to us. Remember, we're sitting in right field, so we're sitting in the outfield. Usher comes up to us, and he has a ball ready. And he gives my son the ball. And he was asking, "Oh, is this your first game? Where are you guys from?" So on and so forth, just chatting us up. And he was like, "Well, hey, here's a ball," and it had been hit from batting practice. And he gave him that ball. How cool is that? Like, that was one of the reasons why I got seats where I got seats, just in case we could get the right fielder's attention and have him throw us a ball. Because there is nothing like getting a ball at a ball game. Even as an older guy like me, I love getting a ball. Now, if I got one now, obviously I'd give it to my son. If my son wasn't with me, I'd give it to another kid. It's just a cool thing that you get to keep something that was in play at the game. It's a really rare for sports where you get to keep a memento from the game that was actually used in the game, something like that. You don't really see that in a lot of the other sports, maybe hockey, but you don't see a puck going into the stands as much as you see foul balls going into the stands. And so that was kind of my hope, that we would get a ball, because it was always going to be that momentum that we could put in his room of a great memory. And I mean, as soon as we sat down, we did that. Usher didn't have to do it. He did not, we didn't make eye contact with him. We probably walked right past him. In fact, we didn't walk past him. We came in to our section another way. He just had his eyes open and was paying attention, and obviously customer service is at the top of mind for the Rays. So he gives us that ball. How cool was that? Right. So we got this ball. Great. And, you know, I've learned from watching videos of giving 4-year-olds balls at games. Don't let him hold it because he's going to throw it out. If you give a 3 or 4-year-old a ball, they are going to throw it, parents, just a heads up. So mom thought that was really cool that he got a ball, right? So, you know, she's already a little bit impressed. And not only that, he said, hey, your first time here? Yeah, it's our first time here. He's like, okay, that's cool. I didn't think, you know, we don't get a lot of people from Chicago, and now we're not from Chicago, but we had Chicago shirts on, and I only live a couple hours away. So, you know, I don't feel like correcting people. I just, oh, okay. He's like, so make sure that you go to guest services, which is if you just go right down here to the left, and then it's going to be the first door on your left after the stairs. You go in there, he can get his first game pin. All right, cool. We'll do that. So, you know, after a couple innings, we go down and we go to guest services, and they're all out of first game pins. Like, man, that's a bummer. But the lady who was working there said, you know, we've got these stuffed Raymond, and Raymond is the mascot for the Rays. We've got these stuffed Raymond doll, or kind of these stuffed Raymonds. I don't even know how to describe it. Kind of looks like a giant bird, maybe like a big blue Big Bird from Sesame Street, but he's blue. Kind of looks like that and bigger. And she goes, you know, would that be all right? Like, yeah, no, that'd be great. You know, we don't have any expectations. That would be great. And so she found us one of those. And then there was another guy who was in there. They had a bunch of school groups there, and all the kids had thunder sticks, and they're just pounding the thunder sticks. And he was like, well, hey, I want you guys to have some thunder sticks as well, which, again, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to find us a stuffed mascot because they're out of the first game pins, and they didn't have to give us thunder sticks. But that's them keeping their head on a swivel, remembering customer service is first, the experience is first. My wife, very impressed, really liked it. And so we're out in the concourse there, and it's clean. And as my wife said, you know, it kind of feels like I'm at an NBA game. Now, again, baseball indoors is like heresy to me. But for her, she was like, I'm not getting sunburn. This is a comfortable temperature. I'm not sweating. I kind of like this. This is really nice. I like indoor baseball. And the prices for food were pretty reasonable. And not only that, as we were walking in the concourse, they had this little kids zone there where kids can go and they can color. They can get their picture with the mascots. They also have a tank just a couple sections down from us, a big tank where you can go and you can pet stingrays there at the stadium. So they built they built things at the stadium with kids in mind. And if kids are happy, as I said, moms are going to be happy. And my wife really, really enjoyed her experience. And I bet if we're back down to that Tampa area again, and I say, hey, you know, you want to go to a Rays game? I could almost 100% guarantee she'll say, yeah, let's go. That'll be fun. And I've taken her to games all over the place. We've, you know, been out to the West Coast and been to games in LA and San Diego. Obviously, we've been to Chicago, Pittsburgh, and kind of everywhere in between. And I think that was probably one of her more enjoyable experiences. And again, our favorite team wasn't even playing, right? The outcome of the game had no bearing on our life. But the fact that the Rays do such a good job of keeping prices low, keeping it clean, being kid and family friendly was just outstanding. And they made a new fan with my wife. And in turn, with women kind of controlling a lot of the purchasing decisions in the households, she would go back to another game. So A+ job to the Rays. They won the game. I think they won 7-2 against the Orioles that day. So my blood bleeds Cubby blue. That will never, ever, ever, ever change. I don't have a second favorite team. I only have a first favorite team. But if there's an American League team that I will root for or I will support, as long as they're not playing the Cubs, it would be the Rays, just for how great they treated their fans and by proxy, how great they treated my family. So there you go. You want to build a fan base, you absolutely have to consider women and, more specifically, consider moms when building your fan base. Now, stay tuned for our next segment, the Uncle Brandon segment. This is the area of the show where I get to give my opinion. ESPN, I'm going to help you out with the ESPYs.
But let me hit you with some knowledge.
So this is the Uncle Brandon segment of the show where I get to give my opinion, but always backed up with a little bit of data and try to help people maybe kind of see the error in their ways or show them a better way. At the very least, I'm going to give some unsolicited advice here. And so my unsolicited Uncle Brandon advice this week is for ESPN. Now, if you're familiar with ESPN, you're probably familiar with their award show, the ESPYs. And the ESPYs is something that they do annually, and they'll give awards to best male and female athlete, best team, best moment, all these different types of awards. And, you know, when it first started, I thought it was kind of a cool thing. And I am not an award show guy. You know, Oscars and Emmys and Golden Globes and what's the one for music, Grammys. It's just not my thing. I'm just not high on watching celebrities celebrate themselves. It's just not what I like to do. But I thought for sports, it was kind of cool. And, you know, growing up with ESPN and watching SportsCenter, I'd say one of the best things growing up in, you know, the 80s and 90s was being sick and staying home from school, because I could watch the same SportsCenter episode like 7 or 8 times in a row, like the heyday of SportsCenter. Think about guys like, you know, Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann, you know, Chris Berman, who I think is probably still with them, but, you know, all those guys, just so much fun to watch. And, you know, over the years, I think ESPN, I don't know if they've lost their way, but they started, I think, to kind of alienate some viewers as they've gotten away from more, you know, providing sports 24 hours a day and sports news throughout the day, and ventured more into entertainment, ventured more into debate, and kind of trying to take a hold of kind of, I guess, the market I'm in podcasting, but trying to take a hold of kind of more of that hot take type of market where you're getting more reactionary type things from your host and from your audience. And to a certain extent, I understand you've got to go where the eyeballs are and you got to go where the excitement is. But I think you do that, you alienate some of your viewers like me, who I really just want sports news. I'm not real interested in people's opinion on things. Now, part of that is just because of my ego and being somebody who studies sport and sport business as part of my job, somebody who's actually been in the locker room, whose livelihood has depended on wins and losses and performance of an athletic department. So I have a little bit different view on things than journalists who've only been in the locker rooms to interview and get quotes. And I'm not saying that they're not important. They do have an important job, and having those beat writers to tell the story, it is an important job. But I think when that goes from the reporting of sports to the, let's say, the editorialization of sport, and that what wants to be pushed, then you're not, it's biased, because we're all biased by our opinion. You just can't get that out. You can try as hard as you can. And I really try to do that in this show, just to kind of give you straight, except when we get to this segment. But you're going to be biased by your opinion or your life experiences or, your political persuasions or whatever it is. You just can't get away from it. And I'm not interested in that. I really don't care what people's opinions are. Just let me know what's going on in sport. And so that's a long explainer to talk about what's happening with the ESPYs. So there's kind of an uproar right now with the ESPYs. One of the awards that they give out every year is the Arthur Ashe Award, right? It's the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. And the award, it's named after, obviously, the famed tennis player Arthur Ashe. And it's given to someone in sports that, quote, possesses strength in the face of adversity, courage in the face of peril, and the willingness to stand up for their beliefs no matter what the cost. Okay. And I think Arthur Ashe is a good model for that award, obviously. Well, this year's award winner, it's going to go to the United States women's national team, so the national soccer team. And it's going to go to them for, as ESPN quotes it or describes it, as their fight for equal pay with the men's team. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why this falls short this year. It's because their ESPN is getting a lot of backlash right now on that this should have been given to someone else. And specifically, it should have been given to Peyton Hillis. Now, if you're not familiar with the Peyton Hillis story, Peyton Hillis is a former NFL running back. In fact, I think he was on the cover of Madden one year. But Peyton Hillis, this has been just a few weeks ago, almost lost his life when he went to save his child and I believe his niece or nephew as they were drowning in the ocean. And so he goes out, and what the crazy thing about this, the craziest thing about this story, so he sees his child, and I believe I should have looked it up. I thought I had it up here, but sorry, it was his nephew. Yeah, nephew. He sees his son and his nephew drowning. So he goes out to save them. And the crazy thing about the story is he had to swim past his son. His nephew was, I don't know, 25, 50 yards away, further out into the ocean. And he knew he had to swim past his son first to even have a chance to save his nephew. I mean, could you imagine that? I'm a dad. I could not imagine seeing my son drowning and know that I got nieces, right? Yeah, I got a nephew too. I'll go with him. If I see my nephew, 25 yards out, and I know he's in a little bit worse spot than my son, and I got to tell my son, hey, I need you to tread water for one more minute, buddy. I got to go get your nephew. I just couldn't imagine from a dad's point of view, swimming past my son, knowing he's drowning, fighting for his life, but knowing that if I stop and save him first and try to get my nephew's going to die. I'm kind of getting emotional just kind of thinking about it here. So he does that. He swims past his son, goes to get his nephew, saves his nephew, comes back in, grabs his son, and saves both of these kids. And in the process, he almost dies. He was in the hospital for a couple weeks recovering. It was a miracle that he survived. Right? So if we look at the kind of, again, what this award is based off of, right? Strength in the face of adversity, check. Right? Courage in the face of peril, double check. And the willingness to stand up for their beliefs, no matter what the cost. Now, he wasn't standing up for a belief, but I would say he was standing for the belief that, a parent is willing to sacrifice their life or will do whatever they have to do for their child. I think, you check two boxes for sure. And I would argue as a parent, you check the third. I think he is deserving of the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. Now, he is going to get another award, I believe, at the ESPYs, but it's not going to be the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. What had people up in arms is that they were going to give it to the women's national team as opposed to Peyton Hillis. And this is where I think ESPN is starting to lose fans, or they have lost fans over the past, 10 or 15 years, where, I'm all for equal pay, for equal work. And, hey, the women's team got their money, and good for them. But I think you can make an argument that, the men's team, the U.S. national team, the men's team deserves some credit, because the men's team had to sign off for getting less money to make sure that more money was given to the women's team. Not only that, the women's team were fighting against a collective bargaining agreement that they had agreed to years earlier. So again, I'm not saying that they're wrong for wanting more money. I am a filthy capitalist pig, man. Get what you can get. Go out and fight for it. That's fine. And, they were able to bring, with their lawsuit, they were able to bring USA Soccer to the table, and they were able to get more money. And I think we're all going to go forward, and we're all going to be happy now. However, what was the adversity that they were facing? They're being paid to play soccer. They're able to use their profile for sponsorships, right? To elevate their brand. What was the peril that they were facing? They weren't making as much as the men, but if you're looking at the economics of the situation, especially when you look at things like the World Cup, the World Cup is bringing in billions of dollars of revenue, where for the men, where in the women, they're only bringing in a few hundred million, right? And the willingness to stand up for their beliefs no matter what the cost. I think an argument could be made to say that, because they believe that they need more money. Right? That's fine. But to give the award to a group of professional athletes, and right or wrong, I think the perception from the general public was that professional athletes are treated very, very well. And to give them that award over somebody who risked his life and almost died, saving his son and his nephew, I think it just falls flat. And I think it falls flat with a lot of people. And frankly, I've kind of been over the whole ESPYs back in 2015. So I want to share this article with you. This is from the Los Angeles Times. Who was the writer here? Greg Braxton. This is from the Los Angeles Times in 2015. And I think the ESPYs, or I think ESPN, made a horrific decision with their Arthur Ashe Award in 2015. But again, I talked about this with the Live Golf and the PGA merger, how it all comes back to money. Let me share this article with you. Again, 2015. The ESPY Awards will pay tribute to late teenage basketball player Lauryn Hill, who battled an inoperable brain tumor to achieve her goal of playing college basketball while helping to raise money for cancer research. So back in 2015, I felt, now I'm a little biased because I was a former women's college basketball coach. So, you can't say, oh, you're being sexist because you don't want the women's team to be honored. No. Not at all. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's a better honoree. And, as a former women's coach, as a former athletic administrator, I've made sure that my female athletes have just as good access to facility, equipment, and everything as the men. And so with that, I was a little bit biased with this. I thought Lauryn Hill, she had brain cancer or inoperable brain tumor, and she was still able to play college basketball. Unfortunately, she ended up passing away. But not only that, she helped raise a ton of money for cancer research. Right? So the announcement of the special presentation came amid increasing furor over Hill being passed over for the Arthur Ashe Courage Award in favor of Caitlyn Jenner, the new female identity of a former Olympic champion, Bruce Jenner. A representative for the ESPYs said the producers of the show had planned to honor Hill all along, but did not announce it until Tuesday. The announcement came in an exclusive report in USA Today. It was not distributed to other media outlets writing about the Jenner controversy. There has been widespread speculation about an alleged deal between ABC, which owns ESPN, and Jenner, the former Olympian, to receive the Ash Award in return for Jenner granting an exclusive interview with ABC's Diane Sawyer to discuss Jenner's gender transition. The interview aired in April, and it was a ratings hit. Now, if you remember back in 2015, obviously the transgender movement has gained a lot of speed here in the past decade. But back in 2015, I felt like it was still kind of on the come up and still kind of something a little bit new. And when Bruce Jenner transitioned to Caitlyn Jenner, this was a really, really big story just 8 years ago. Although Jenner has been praised for Jenner's bravery, prominent sport personalities have objected, including NBC's Podgorski, who said that awarding Jenner the Ash Award was a, quote, crass exploitation play, unquote, for ratings, and that other lesser-known athletes with a more solid connection to sports should be given the award. Hill, who died in April, has been cited by many in sports and in social media as being as more deserving of the award than Jenner, who is a cast member of the reality series Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Jenner left sports after winning the Olympic gold in the decathlon in 1976. ABC and the ESPYs have denied that there was any arrangement with Jenner to receive the Ash Award. So, you know, back then, that's when the ESPYs, you know, I wasn't tuning in a lot, but certainly at that point, that's when they lost me. You lost me as just kind of the average fan. I think in some respects, for some people who watch sport, I think the transition of Bruce Jenner to Caitlyn Jenner is seen as brave and convicted in somebody's beliefs, and that can draw some inspiration to a certain extent. But I think you're talking about a small percentage of people. I think there's also a large percentage of people who are fundamentally against that, or fundamentally against having that front and center on TV. With that, somebody fighting a brain tumor, and not only that, but doing it in the bravest way possible, where I'm still going to go to school, I'm still going to find a way to play basketball, and not only through this, but I'm going to make sure that others benefit, even though I'm struggling with this awful situation, by raising money for cancer research. That's inspiring. I think universally that's inspiring, where with the Bruce Jenner situation, it can be a little bit more polarizing. And, you know, talking about trying to bring everybody in, as kind of been the theme of this show, I don't think you do a good job of bringing everybody in, or at least getting a consensus on something, where if you're going to push things that are highly, highly polarized. And that's kind of what ESPN is doing right now. And I think that's what they're getting right now with honoring the U.S. women's team with the Arthur Ashe Award. Now, ESPN can do whatever it wants to do. And again, you know, I think if you've got convictions and you fight for them, and certainly the team members of the U.S. women's team did that, and they were able to score a victory, my hat's off to you. That's great. But if you're ESPN, is that the best use of our airtime? Is there something else or another way to honor that while also not being polarizing to our audience? And so I think that's one of the first episodes of this show that we did. I talked about that, you know, kind of balancing at the time during COVID with 2020 and a lot of the social justice messaging that was coming out, you know, balancing that with what are our fans' perspectives on that, right? And how do you balance supporting your athletes and wanting to, be in lockstep with them on the things that they feel are really important with fans who may not appreciate that messaging. So that's a really, really difficult thing to do. But I do think that there's some instances where it's a little bit easier. I think in this one here, it's kind of an easy call for me. If I'm on the ESPYs board or whoever's making that decision, I think Peyton Hillis is a little bit better recipient, just like I did in 2015, where I thought Lauryn Hill was a much better recipient there. So that's just my Uncle Brandon advice for ESPN. I would try to look for some ways not to be as polarizing, bring more people in. And, right now, ESPN, they're struggling. Disney is going through another round of layoffs. They're doing a lot of cost cutting. If we look at the kind of traditional cable subscribers, the number of subscribers, this for ESPN, it fell by 6.6 million subscribers between quarter 3 of 2021 and quarter 3 of 2022. So since 2013, cable, satellite, and Teleco TV, it's consecutively lost 34 million subscribers, and it's now just in 67 million US homes. And a lot of that is with younger generations that are cord cutting that are now streaming. Now, the good news for ESPN is that ESPN Plus seems to be doing okay in streaming. However, a lot of their streaming customers are kind of bundled in with like Disney Plus, like with the Hulu and Disney Plus. And so they're not just getting ESPN Plus on its own. So if you get ESPN Plus on its own, ESPN is going to receive more money than if you just do the Disney Plus bundle, where ESPN actually receives less money for that. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there right now with ESPN, but Disney across the board is certainly having some revenue issues, which is why they're doing some cuts, and that's affecting ESPN, who's owned by Disney. And now you're starting to see some big names like Stan Verrett is going to be leaving ESPN. I think we're going to see some other names coming down the pike here pretty soon. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Facts Over Fandom show. Hope you enjoyed the show. Again, please be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FOF_show. Watch us on YouTube and Rumble. Listen to us on Spotify. We're also on Apple, Amazon, and Google. Have a great week. I can't wait to be here, talk with you next week. As always, love God, love each other, be a good sport. I'll see you next Friday.